Hey everyone, this is Pete. Welcome back to Patrons Only. You're getting two of these this week because today is Thank You Patrons Day on Patreon. I'm making this video public, just so you know, just so that people who aren't already patrons can see this message, see what it means to me, hear my message of thanks and gratitude and so on, and just so I can show my appreciation to even people who aren't signed up for Patreon, I guess. I haven't really planned anything specific to say for this, so I just wanted to give a sort of honest, heartfelt, off-the-cuff kind of speech, I guess. So if you're watching this, you're probably familiar with at least one of my projects online. So there's two main ones that are active at the minute. The first one is MoeGamer.net, which is probably the most important to me. For those of you who have come to me in my work quite recently, MoeGamer.net was set up when I was laid off from my previous job at US Gamer. My job at US Gamer was an absolute dream job. It was everything I'd ever wanted. I had always wanted to write about games for a living. I'd always been inspired by my brother's success in that career, and I wanted to follow in his footsteps. And for a while, it looked like I was achieving that. So for a while, I had some success when I was on GamePro, and then GamePro closed down. And then a little while later, I was contacted and invited to be one of the founding members of US Gamer, which, for the unfamiliar, is the American branch of Eurogamer, so run by Gaming Network. And yeah, it was a dream come true for me. I was working with someone who I had previously really enjoyed working with. That was Jazz Rignall. I was working alongside a lot of very talented people. And perhaps best of all, when US Gamer first started, it had been set up in such a way that they were trying to encourage personalities to write, people to play to their strengths, to focus on their specialisms, to write about the things that they knew about, the things that they understood, the things that they had specialist knowledge about, and that sort of thing. And over time, I sort of developed quite a reputation for being friendly to games that often didn't get the time of day from other websites, mostly Japanese games, mostly ones that often got written off by other sites for having too much in the way of fan service or provocative content or that sort of thing. People were very grateful for the chance I gave to these games. And I made some great contacts in the industry and had some great conversations with people who worked at companies like Nipponichi Software America and Xseed Games and that sort of thing. And I had quite an audience, quite a following. It was great, which is why it was so absolutely heartbreaking when I had that snatched away from me. So I was just laid off. It was my birthday, and I got an email saying that my services weren't required anymore because the site wanted to move to an all-American staff. Now, I mean, I've gone back and forth and contemplated various things about this situation over the years, and I can't say anything for certain one way or the other, but I mean, you can probably draw your own conclusions about what happened there, given what I've just said. And so before my notice period was up at US Gamer, before I was without a job, I decided to set up MoeGamer.net as a means of continuing some of the things that I'd been doing at US Gamer, specifically a column that I'd done every week called JP Gamer that focused specifically on Japanese games, specifically on the stuff that didn't necessarily make the news headlines each day, specifically on the games that didn't necessarily get much in the way of review or preview or guide content or anything like that. I made a particular effort to highlight these games that didn't get much attention and that didn't get taken seriously by a lot of other websites. And like I say, that was very well received. I had a good following of people. I made some great, probably lifelong friends from that as well, which was fantastic. And so MoeGamer was initially set up as a means of basically continuing that after I left US Gamer. So for its first year and a bit, I guess, I updated it sporadically with articles about games that I found interesting or phenomena that I found interesting and that sort of thing. I didn't have a particular sort of structure or anything in mind, but I really enjoyed writing it. And people still enjoyed reading it. So people still came along and left comments and left likes and shared my stuff and that sort of thing. And in 2016, I decided I wanted to take that to the next level. I wanted to make Moe Gamer into something more, but I didn't want to make it into yet another sort of, I'm not sure what the right word is, I guess a clone site, a clone of one of the big sites, which is the danger when you're starting a new gaming site, is the temptation to get locked into that daily news cycle and start regurgitating press releases and writing all the same clickbait articles that everyone else writes. There's just no point in doing that, because as much as many of us hate the big name sites out there for their crap coverage, they've got the market sewn up in that side of thing. People aren't going to come to your site for the news. They're going to go to IGN, Polygon, Kotaku, whatever. And so I decided that next phase I wanted to do something a bit different. And around the time I was contemplating this, I think it was probably around the time the first Destiny came out, I think, maybe. I've got that in my mind for some reason. But I looked at the various commercial sites around that time, including my old stomping grounds at US Gamer, and I saw that their homepages were flooded with articles about this one game. This one game was monopolizing their attention. And so I thought, well, what if I did that, but for a game no one's heard of? Or for a game that very few people have heard of? Or a game that has been treated unfairly in the past? And so from that I came up with the idea for what I now call the cover game feature. So inspired by a magazine having a particular game on its front cover and devoting a significant number of pages in that issue to that game, I decided to take a particular game or series at a time and focus on it in detail. And that had two main benefits. First of all, it allowed me to do more in-depth analysis than had ever been possible when I was working in the professional games press, with the daily churn of news and reviews and that sort of thing. And secondly, it allowed a bit of structure to my own free time. It allowed me to look at my hobby in a different way. It allowed me to look at the games that I was playing, and rather than just sort of mindlessly working my way through them, I would play them with a mind to analysing them and writing about them and contemplating what their themes were and what their narrative was and what they were doing with characterisation. It was using a lot of skills that I learned back in university and just haven't really had the opportunity to use since then, you know? I studied English and music at university, and it was a largely useless degree for the most part. But being able to actually apply some of that knowledge and practice that I learned back then to something I love so much and feel so passionately about, yeah, I felt like I was onto something there. And the readers seemed to agree, because traffic numbers started going up. People started sharing my stuff around. I started developing a reputation again. I started being able to sort of reach out to PR companies and software companies and get review copies and that sort of thing, even though I was a one-man site, putting out, at that point, maybe 1 or 2 articles a week. And as time advanced, I gradually sort of piece by piece expanded what I've been doing with Moe Gamer. So beyond just covering Japanese games now, I'm covering anything that is interesting, anything that is overlooked or underappreciated. So those of you who've known me for 15, 20 years or whatever at this point, you may remember I used to be involved in a project called the Squadron of Shame, which was a group of us who got together and we specifically explored these overlooked and underappreciated games. At that point, we were podcasting about it and discussing it on forums and that sort of thing. And so basically what I do with Moe Gamer now is what I was doing with that back then, only it's just me. Also, I've got the Moe Gamer podcast now with Chris, which is sort of was a very welcome return to podcasting for me. I used to really enjoy doing the Squadron of Shame Squadcast, and a bit bittersweet to me, those memories, because a lot of the people that I used to be involved with that, I haven't heard from for a very long time, for various reasons. I won't get into that now, but yeah, suffice to say, Moe Gamer is extremely important to me. It is, I would say, the primary means in which I engage with my hobby these days. It's the primary means through which that I enjoy gaming. I specifically pick up games these days because I know I want to write about them. I know that they sound interesting, and I know that there's going to be a good few articles in them. And I still specifically avoid the stuff, in most cases anyway. There are exceptions like Pokemon at the moment. But for the most part, I like to explore things that don't get the time of day in a lot of other places. And that's really important to me because a lot of these games have been extremely personally meaningful to me. They've carried emotional resonance and weight. They have helped me through some tough times. Since 2010 or so, I've struggled quite a bit with anxiety and depression and what turned out to be Asperger's. And gaming and writing about those things have helped me to sort of process a lot of things. So being able to play games and read visual novels with characters that I could relate to, that I could understand, that's been so important for me in helping to understand myself, helping to understand how to interact with others, helping to understand what's important to me and the people that I want to spend time with and that sort of thing. So it's not just been entertainment for me, it's been something that has been personally relevant, personally helpful, and a growing experience. So hopefully you can see how important it is to me, and hopefully from that you can understand how much it means to me that people are willing to support me doing that. So a lot of you watching this will be existing patrons who have helped me out a great deal. You've put your money behind what I was doing and said, yeah, I like what you're doing, keep it up. And that means an incredible amount, because it means that I'm not just doing something just for me. I'm not doing something selfish. I'm doing something that other people find value in. And that's an incredible feeling. Like every time I received a comment or a message thanking me for covering a game like Senran Kagura or the Neptunia series or Dungeon Travelers 2 or something like that, every time I got a comment or a message thanking me for covering those games without taking the predictable, "Ooh, it's fan service" approach, that felt really good, because I know I would have felt the same way. If I wasn't doing this, I would be incredibly grateful for anyone out there who was treating these games with respect. Because it's frustrating when you find something that you love and you enjoy and it's not taken seriously, or people judge you for it, or that sort of thing. And that's not somewhere that we should be these days. It's not something we should be doing. And so, yeah, that's why it means something to me that I've successfully reached out and touched people with the things that I've written. The things that I've written have been important enough to people that they want to support me, and they want to help me do more, and they want to help me do it better, and that sort of thing. And that's an amazing feeling. So if you've supported me for that reason, thank you. That's all I can say, really. It's very difficult to express how much that means to me and how important that is to me. But thank you, because you are helping me take my enjoyment of this medium, of this hobby, to a whole other level. Something that I guess I'd always dreamed of since a kid. I'd always written stuff for myself as a kid. And now I've got people reading it. And that's great. And that's wonderful. So thank you. And the second side of what I'm doing of course, which I know some of you are here for primarily, is the Atari A to Z side of things. Now, Atari A to Z is a more recent project than Moe Gamer. I've always been fascinated with Atari home computers because I grew up with them. Our household was always full of them. So my earliest memories involve using the computers like the Atari 400, the Atari 800 XL, the Atari 130 XE, and then on to the Atari ST. I was always surrounded by these computers. They were always doing things. It wasn't just games either. We would make greetings cards using Print Shop on the Atari 8-bit. I would type things up on the Atari ST word processor. So those systems have always meant a great deal to me. And when the opportunity arose for me to relieve my parents of our old Atari collection that had been sitting in their loft for a long time, I knew that I wanted to do something more than just put it on a bunch of shelves behind me. I knew I wanted to do something to celebrate these amazing machines that I'd grown up with. And I thought a good way to do that would be to explore their software libraries. Because there's a lot of games on the Atari 8-bit in particular that didn't come out on the other big name 8-bit platforms of the day, like the Commodore 64 and the Spectrum. And so there's a lot of unique stuff out there that hasn't had very much coverage online. So much like with MoeGamer.net, I like to cover overlooked and underappreciated stuff. So too that's basically the principle behind Atari A to Z as well. Except here I'm dealing with a whole platform that is overlooked and underappreciated in many cases. And so as I started working on the initial 8-bit series, I decided that, yeah, I want to expand this a bit more. I want to do ST stuff as well. And so again, having acquired this fine collection of software behind me here, I wanted to work through it. I wanted to share it with people. I wanted to talk about what it meant to me, how special these games and experiences were to me growing up, and in some cases have some new experiences. In some cases revisit stuff that I didn't get when I was too young for them. And that's been a real delight. And then, of course, when the opportunity to acquire a copy of Atari Flashback Classics for Nintendo Switch turned up, I knew there had to be another series there. The Atari 2600 is actually slightly before my time, but the Atari 5200, of which there are a few games in that collection, is essentially an Atari 8-bit computer in console form. And so there's still some games in there that have great meaning to me. And for the rest of the time, these are games that I knew of growing up in many cases, but never actually played. So in a lot of cases, exploring Atari Flashback Classics has been the opportunity to try a lot of this stuff for the first time and sort of see where the dawn of gaming came from in many ways. See the roots of all sorts of different genres and styles of game and series in some cases. And I absolutely love it. It's one of my favourite things to do each week is record and edit the Atari A to Z videos. It's just so much fun. It's so much fun being able to go back to my childhood, essentially, and revisit the things that were important to me back then and confirm that they're still important to me right now. And so again, if you have supported me based on that, thank you. Because again, you are showing me that the things that I'm doing, they have value. That I'm not just some guy shouting into the void about old computers that no one remembers. There are people out there who find what I'm doing worthwhile, worth sharing, worth talking about, worth engaging with me over. And again, it means so much. So if you've supported me for any reason over the course of the last 4 or 5 years or so now, once again, a very, very sincere thank you. Whether you're a patron or not, whether you're just someone who stops by each video and leaves a comment or a like, or is just subscribed to me and just watches an occasional video, thank you. And if you're a patron, helping me to continue doing what I do, helping me to expand what I do by affording me the opportunity to buy new hardware, buy new software, invest directly back into these projects. Thank you. That's pretty much everything I got to say. So I hope that was a suitable thank you patrons video. Like I say, it is Thank You Patrons Day on Patreon today, so you may well be seeing a fair few of these videos today, but yeah, I hope I got my message across in mine. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.